This is the jungle. We call it the Big Apple. New York, New York. If you can make it here, as the song says, you can make it anywhere. There's a lifestyle for everyone, even for wildlife. You'll be surprised who's out walking these streets. From penthouses in the sky to nightlife underground, take a walk on the wild side of New York.
Major funding for nature is provided by the Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television. Major corporate support is made possible by Canon in our dedication to the preservation of nature and its never-ending beauty. In photographs, you can capture the wild and leave it as you found it. By Ford Motor Company, we turned large areas of this plant complex outside Mexico City into a natural refuge for waterfowl, amphibians, and desert flora. Ford Motor Company, better ideas driven by you. And by TIAA Craft. For 80 years, the thoughtful choice in financial services for people in education and research. TIAA Craft, ensuring the future for those who shape it. And by annual financial support from viewers like you.
This is a journey many of our families have taken. Most of us have ancestors from an old country. Animals, too, have similar stories. They, too, have been immigrants for over 300 years. They arrive with no plans for the future. They'll just have to survive as best they can. These stowaways have traveled by every means possible. They've come by sea. They've journeyed by land. And now, they even arrive by air. Some hitch a ride with more routine deliveries. Their destination will challenge all their survival skills. This can be a tough town, all right. But many call it the capital of the world. This is New York, the most glittering habitat on Earth. Lady Liberty welcomes all comers to the land of hope and opportunity. But even she would be surprised to learn that in the midst of 7 million people, there are millions of animals out there to make a living too. New York is one of the wonders of the modern world. It's a forest of skyscrapers. The buildings tower 1/4 mile high, like great trees reaching for the light. They are perhaps the nearest thing to heaven in New York. It's amazing that this man-made jungle teems with life. wildlife. The peregrine falcon, an aerial hunter of unsurpassed skill, a creature of high places. It's usually found living on mountain crags. But to this bird, New York is just cliff after cliff after cliff. Peregrines nest on at least 11 sites in the 5 boroughs of New York. This is a top predator, honed and chiseled like a sports car, all flowing lines and speed. Peregrines are wildlife celebrities, and for all celebrities, privacy is a problem. Fearless, they dive from the sky in defense of their offspring. But these fierce birds were once endangered, so now each chick is banded to monitor its progress. New York offers falcons an unlimited supply of what they like best. Pigeons. Pigeons thrive on city life. They eat almost anything, nest almost anywhere. They're fast, street smart, good at many things. But a specialist like the peregrine is very, very good at just one: killing pigeons. A pigeon can lose everything in a New York minute. These are mean streets for a lot of creatures. Unless you're a big talent like the peregrine or a tough survivalist like the pigeon, New York can be rough. This tiger swallowtail butterfly, fragile and delicate, needs a helping hand. Otherwise, it doesn't stand a chance. Butterflies need nectar to drink and a place to breed. And as even butterflies have discovered, you can find just about anything you need in New York. High above the streets, there's a hidden side of the city: rooftop gardens. As much as people need buildings to live and work in, they also need a place to get away from it all. Public parks are fine. Even better is a private oasis. Such luxuries are not always high rent. There are gardens here to suit every level of ambition. The monarch butterfly, on its yearly migration to Mexico, never needs to descend to the streets below. It can find food by hopping from rooftop to rooftop across the city. Up here, above all the Wall Street deals and Broadway openings, there's another city, ordered and perfect. A beehive. A modern New Yorker is about to undergo an ancient ritual. For at least 2,000 years, people have carefully collected bees from their hives and deliberately stung themselves. Remarkable claims are made for the medicinal properties of bee venom. For example, it's said that beekeepers who are regularly stung never get arthritis. Bee venom is not formally recognized by modern science. But hey, if you can take the pain, maybe it's worth a try. Bees on their own have a lot to worry about down in the street. They are often victims of violent crime. Like New York itself, a beehive never sleeps. But that's where the resemblance ends. The hive is about order, conformity. New York is something else. New York's buildings are towering expressions of variety. Bees build perfectly alike. But you gotta admire their work. No shape holds more space for the same outlay of building materials as the hexagon. But what New York lacks in perfection, it makes up for in personality. New York is the hub of the human universe, a global center for art, fashion, music, theater, finance. It never slows down. You just move a little faster to keep up. The sun still rises when it should, but a New York day just seems to last a little longer. The city is a human environment, yet even people can find it overwhelming. An animal like this praying mantis must cope with a restless and aggressive place. This insect is built like a weapon. Its vision is acutely tuned to the irregular movements of its insect prey. Like radar, its head locks onto movement and tracks it. Exposed to this, a mantis may find its prey-seeking vision overstimulated. But there is a place where a stressed-out New Yorker can find relief. And it's practically on the other side of the street. Central Park. It was originally designed as a trip to the country, a touch of the original wilderness on the outskirts of the city. Now, with the concrete jungle closing in around its 843 acres, it's the park, not the city, that has become a civilizing haven. An egret has found peace in the heart of the city. The park lives up to New York's reputation for variety. And in its meadows, lakes, and woods, life goes on as if there were no great city out there at all. A cormorant visits from the open seas. It's used to negotiating a certain amount of boating traffic. A 250,000 people may visit the park in a single weekend. Its unnerving reputation may still be justified at night, but by day, Central Park is far closer to heaven than even the tallest buildings in New York. High in the trees, tent moth caterpillars have built their silken nest to face the sun. It acts like a greenhouse, keeping them warm even on cool days. The caterpillars sit on the nest, or in it, until they warm up. They live in huge communities and only leave the nest to look for food. As they head out, they spin a thread of silk all the way to where they feed, and when they return to the nest, they'll follow exactly the same path back. Since there are so many of them, they'll eventually weave streets of silk along the twigs. They specialize in eating fruit trees and have found the leaves of a beautiful Central Park cherry tree. As they feed, the caterpillars cool down. They're cold-blooded, and if they get too cold, they simply slow to a stop. Then they're easy pickings for the birds. So they just eat as much as possible, as fast as they can, then rush back to the nest before it's too late. By repeating this cycle 4 times a day, they can also get the jump on competitors while it's still relatively cool. One cherry-eating competitor is the enormous caterpillar of the robin moth. It's a creature known for 2 things. It looks like a chorus line of ladybugs, and it can forecast the weather. When the time comes to spin the cocoon in which it will spend the winter, it must decide whether to go up the tree or down. If the caterpillar predicts a hard winter, it will go down to the base of the tree where its cocoon will be protected under a layer of snow from the likes of mice and birds. If it's going to be a mild winter, it goes up to the safety of the branches, betting that its enemies will be feeding on unfrozen ground below. This caterpillar has predicted snow. A praying mantis in the peace of Central Park can really make good use of its prey-seeking vision. A mantis spears its prey on hard, sharp spikes on its legs, then eats it alive. The fishing in Central Park is surprisingly good, but some come here just to rest. Others build homes here and raise families. Everyone enjoys Central Park in their own particular way. Sometimes there's a bit of extra excitement. A celebrity has been spotted that amazes even jaded New Yorkers. A red-tailed hawk. Hawks often fly high over the city on seasonal migrations north and south, but they don't often come into town. Yet this red-tail seems to be more than a tourist. He appears to be looking the place over very carefully. And he's not alone. They're a couple looking for a place to live. Everyone knows what an ordeal that is in New York. In the crush of the traffic, the lights, the people, will there be any room for a wild hawk family? Animals do make a living in the most surprising places. Libraries, it turns out, are full of things to eat. Books. The tiny spider beetle feeds on old organic matter like paper. It's guilty of vandalism in many libraries. A tale is told of a New York spider beetle with a famously large appetite. The beetle ate its way through 27 volumes in a straight line. This event is itself recorded in a book. Later generations of beetles may devour their own history. Sometimes it's not the place that is surprising, it's the creature itself. The oddest sports fans around the playing fields of Brooklyn College are bright green monk parrots from South America. Monk parrots have built huge communal nests high up on the floodlights. In the early 1980s, a few parrots escaped from a crate at JFK Airport. Like many immigrants before them, they settled in Brooklyn. Now they number in the hundreds. That a bird from the tropics could make it here, where temperatures plummet well below zero, is a marvel. Perhaps they keep warm by sticking together, and the transformers on the lights may even provide heating on a cold winter day. They search the grassy playing fields for any kinds of seeds. Here they mingle with pigeons, immigrants from Europe a century before them. Instinct sends them high up to roost. Like artificial trees, The lighting towers keep them safe from predators on the ground. Here, the talkative parrots seem completely at home. Like the rainforest itself, this concrete jungle has many vertical layers. Beneath the streets is an underworld where, in the dark and the damp, the cockroach is king. Stories of this underworld have become legends. For years, it's been rumored that full-grown alligators inhabit these rusting labyrinths. Residents are supposed to have flushed baby alligators into the sewers, where they've grown to huge proportions, feeding on rats. It's probably a myth, and yet, there were 2 reported encounters in the 30s with alligators in the sewers. Surviving down here takes the same cunning as it does on the streets above. Raccoons use the storm drains as underground highways to get around the city. They roam through tunnels built for moving things around. This underworld carries power, water, communications, and people. The subway system is the heartbeat of New York. It carries 3.5 million people every day. It's an underground supply system that feeds all that restless energy. It keeps the city on the move. Up above, it's New York by night. The lights go on. The stars come out. The city sparkles in all its splendor. For many, the day is over, while for others, it's just beginning. People throng to Broadway and Times Square. If anything, the pace picks up. But New York nightlife isn't glamorous for everyone. Occasionally, the bright lights draw in a wandering visitor, a moon moth, flitting around like a lost soul. It's looking for a mate, another moon moth on these city streets. A male must pick his way carefully through this jungle to track down a waiting female by the pheromone she has released to lure him in. If they're lucky, the female will find the right plants to lay her eggs on in some rooftop garden. The days get shorter and the nights longer when winter comes to New York. Temperatures can sink to 15 below zero. Storms sweep across the city, transforming it with snow. It's cold and wet, and sometimes very beautiful. Birds that stay for the winter work hard to find food. While some rely on handouts. Still, winter in New York isn't what it used to be. 100,000 years ago, the Arctic ice came south. An ice age pushed a glacier down to where New York now stands. It was a sheet of ice 1,000 feet thick. This is nature's power, and almost beyond imagining. Once there was a mountain here, but the glacier scoured it flat, leaving a perfect platform for the building of New York City. Ice ages have come and gone. They will probably come again. Last time, there was a mountain in the way. Now there's only New York. But here and now, it's been a winter almost without snow. One robin moth caterpillar correctly predicted this last summer and spun its cocoon up a tree. The chrysalis inside hibernates through the winter. It stays alive because its predators are on the soft ground below. But this one predicted incorrectly. The caterpillar spun its cocoon at the base of the tree, and the protein-rich chrysalis is now good food for a mouse. The caterpillar, sad to say, is no better at predicting the future than we are. Around the city, animals are coping with the winter in their own ways. As temperatures fell, honeybees that didn't make it back to the hive were frozen. Inside, the bees keep themselves warm and active, even in the coldest winter, by huddling together and buzzing their flight muscles. They feed on stored honey and are ready to defend their hive at any time. The honeybee is a domesticated animal that winters happily in the city. But there are some New Yorkers who get left out in the cold. They are abandoned. And when you're on your own, this can be a pretty tough town. These dogs are neither generalists that can make it anywhere, nor specialists that can make the most of urban life. They'll be lucky to see spring. Of course, the Big Apple is famous for having the best of everything. And some New Yorkers live in the lap of luxury. These dogs enjoy every comfort. It's probably a good life, and a long one. Now and then, it seems there is a little justice in this world. The most successful of all New York's immigrants avoids the winter by staying inside. The brown-banded cockroach, a tropical invader. If you need some roach control, you might try a tropical gecko. But be sure to get the right kind. The leopard gecko doesn't eat roaches and can go 3 months without eating anything at all. Cockroaches breed where it's warm. They can infest electrical appliances. Once inside, they release body fluids that cause short circuits. Having cockroaches in your television is bad enough. But if you happen to own a photocopier as well, you can bet your bottom dollar they're in there too. You may have to take drastic measures. In the long run, the cockroaches usually win. The only thing to do is leave the television to them. Every day, 15,000 tons of garbage are collected from the streets of New York. The trash is loaded onto barges and sent across the harbor to Staten Island, home to the largest landfill site on Earth. Some of this rubbish is edible, and here, and wherever there's a chance of a handout, the gulls begin to gather. Countless thousands of gulls and up to 50 other species of birds live off the refuse of the city. The landfill is one of the highest points on the entire Atlantic coast. It can even be seen from space. It's 50 times the size of an Egyptian pyramid, a monument to all the things we throw away. For birds with more delicate tastes, there are more natural foods at Jamaica Bay on the edge of Brooklyn. This is a wildlife reserve right inside the city limits. Here, gulls collect clams and mussels. Even after a decade or so of cleanup, the harbor is still too polluted for humans to eat these shellfish. But the gulls seem to do okay. They've figured out that if they drop the clams from the sky, they can shatter the hard shells. The gulls have learned to use the ground as a tool. But it takes some practice. There is another way to solve this problem. Gulls living around the summer homes at Jamaica Bay have realized that iron and wood are superior to sand for getting the job done. When the tide is out and the clams are exposed, the gulls can cause quite a racket. Animals and people, too, enjoy the peace and quiet of Jamaica Bay. But the noise and pace of Manhattan are only a subway ride away. And even Manhattan softens around the edges with the arrival of spring. In Chinatown, they prepare to celebrate spring in an ancient way, with the traditional music of birdsong. Immigrants from southern China have brought songbirds all the way across the world. Each morning, they bring their birds to a communal garden to hear them sing. This bird is called the war may. It means beautiful eyebrow. Other birds are brought to the garden, but the war may is what people come to hear. The males are highly territorial, and if they should lapse into silence, a whistle mimicking an intruding bird sends them into a frenzy. And deep in Central Park, in the green heart of the Big Apple, spring is in full swing. On a perfect afternoon, it's easy to see how much people and animals have in common. There's the same amount of sunning and showing off. The flexing of dormant muscles. A curiosity and exuberance about life. Having predicted the weather correctly, a robin moth has made it through the winter. This fresh new year seems just like the last, but it's subtly different. It will be 1/50,000th of a second shorter than last year, which was that much shorter than the one before. Each year, as we get older, we claim that the years go by a little faster. Well, they actually do. Surprisingly, it's all because of the moon. 4 billion years ago, a collision with a rogue planet blasted the moon from the Earth's surface. It's been slowly receding from us ever since. As the moon retreats, the tides, caused by its pull on the Earth, and which slow the Earth's rotation by friction, are getting smaller. With smaller tides, the Earth spins a little faster, shaving a little time off the years. A few 100 million years ago, the moon was much closer. The Earth's orbit was much slower, and time has a way of adding up. A year then was 44 months long, and the moon's gravity sent huge tides roaring across the globe with waves that would have crashed high against Manhattan's skyline. There is an animal still living around New York whose direct ancestors would have witnessed that dramatic world. The horseshoe crab. Its breeding cycle would have been tied to the moon then, and it still is. They appear from the seabed on the full tide each spring to spawn. This odd animal, this walking frying pan, is one of the world's real wonders. Some call it primitive. In fact, it just evolved a design and way of living millions of years ago that worked supremely well, and it's never needed to change. Once it shared its beaches with dinosaurs. Now, it just bumps into old tires. When the moon was huge in the sky, the crabs could have walked from New York to Europe. Way back then, the Atlantic Ocean hadn't even appeared. The entire history of human civilization is scarcely a heartbeat in the time span of a single species of crab. Today, they must suffer the injury of having their eggs eaten by birds, mere spring chickens in the evolutionary order of things. By paddling furiously, these laughing gulls can draw the eggs out of the sand. A few glossy ibis lend an exotic touch to the feeding frenzy. Once a year, the crabs provide these birds with a feast before they slip once more beneath the waves. Crabs on the beaches are a sure sign of spring, and back in the city, so are breeding peregrine falcons. Hungry chicks need food. Pigeons of New York, beware. The peregrine streaks across the city like a bullet. Some say they reach 70 miles an hour. Others say 170. It doesn't really matter, not to a pigeon anyway. Hit by a bullet the weight of a brick, it won't remember anything. Ever. Everyone knows if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Surviving here does take a certain amount of talent, ingenuity, and perseverance. It's not for everyone. Still, it's a big city, and there's room for all kinds, the fierce and the tame, the solitary and the social. Across Central Park, at one of the best addresses in town, two visitors to the Big Apple have found a home. The red-tailed hawks have built a nest high above Fifth Avenue, Manhattan's Gold Coast. Red-tails have always nested in trees, up till now. This building site is a first. Their perfect view of Central Park leaves them in plain sight of admiring paparazzi.
Oh boy, does he float like a kite or what?
Their stunt flying is a big attraction. Manhattan's bird lovers watch for hours from the best seats in town.
What is that, guy?
The daddy.
The daddy what?
Daddy went to the hawk.
Oh.
The hawks are raising a family, like lots of other parents. With chicks to feed, the parents must hunt, searching the city for unlucky rats.
Yes, it is.
Woo!
There's quite a style to the way they make a living, and everyone hopes they will stay. After all, the red-tails are perfect New Yorkers. They bring glamour, excitement, that certain star quality to the wild side of New York.
To learn more about what you've seen on this nature program, visit PBS online at www.pbs.org. Major funding for nature is provided by the Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television. Major corporate support is made possible by Canon in our dedication to the preservation of nature and its never-ending beauty. In photographs, you can capture the wild and leave it as you found it. By Ford Motor Company, our new vehicles are made with more than 2 million tons of recycled metals, enough to build 250 Eiffel Towers a year. Ford Motor Company, better ideas driven by you. And by TIAA Craft, for 80 years the thoughtful choice in financial services for people in education and research. TIAA Craft, ensuring the future for those who shape it. And by annual financial support from viewers like you.
The Wild Side of New York is available on home video cassette for $19.95 plus shipping. To order, call 1-800-336-1917 or write to the address on your screen.
This is PBS.